I'm going to share with you 5 things I wish I knew before my vitrectomy eye surgery. Now, to bring you up to speed, 6 months, almost exactly 6 months ago, I had a vitrectomy. And short description, basically, my retina was detached. So if you are inside the eye, in the back of the eye, there's a layer called the retina. And for some reason, in my case, that retina became detached and was threatening my eyesight. So the vitrectomy is an operation where the retina is pushed back in place, and then either a gas bubble or oil is placed inside the eye, and that keeps the pressure on the retina so that it can heal and secure itself back in place. And then afterwards, your eye presumably and ostensibly is back to normal. So I had one of those. I went to Manila, went to St. Luke's Hospital in Manila, had the operation. And even though I was prepared for the operation for the most part by the referring doctors here on Saipan, there are certain things that I learned during the process, during the experience, that I wish I had known beforehand. And that if you watch till the end, after I share these 5 with you, I'll share with you whether knowing these 5 things would have affected my decision to get the vitrectomy in the first place. So let's start. Number 1. The first thing that I realized that I wasn't prepared for were the possible complications. Okay. Now, every operation has the potential and the possibility of having complications. In my case, what ended up happening after the vitrectomy is that the eye was not functioning back to normal. So in a normal eye, there's fluid that collects inside the eye, and that's called the aqueous humor. And under normal circumstances, there's a pathway that the fluid is able to drain from the eye, and that's called the trabecular meshwork. And typically, the fluid collects inside the eye, and then it drains out and dissolves into the body through that meshwork. In my case, since the since the retina had been detached for so long, it had been over a year, then the trabecular meshwork atrophied, and pigment collected and blocked the normal passageway. So once the retina was pushed back in place and the fluid started to collect inside the eye, it was unable to drain in the normal pathways, through the normal pathways. So then the pressure inside the eye started to build, and that presents an issue. So they had to go back in. I had to schedule a second operation. This one is called SLT, selective labor trabeculoplasty, and in that operation, little shots of laser are shot at the trabecular meshwork in an effort to sort of stimulate it back into normal operation. So that was the second operation. And that didn't work. So they had to go back in again, had a third operation, and that was to put a valve in, an Ahmed valve that allowed the fluid to drain through an alternate pathway. So I ended up having 3 operations when I was only prepared for 1. So that was the first thing, the possible complications. So as a bit of advice, one of the things that you might want to ask about or be prepared for is if there are complications that might arise as a result of the operation. Again, in my case, it was because I had allowed the detachment to proceed for so long, mainly because I didn't know that it was happening, and other aspects of the eye became non-functional. So that was number 1. Possible complications I was not prepared for prior to making that initial decision to get the operation. Number 2, long-term reliance on eye drops. As a result of the operation, the eye is now more susceptible to dry eye. It's more susceptible to inflammation. It's more susceptible to pressure fluctuations. And hopefully some of those will return to normal over time. But one of the things that I was unprepared for was certain things that I heard that the doctor say that I might be on certain eye drops for a long time, meaning to control the pressure or to control inflammation in the eye. So that was something. Generally, my prime directive in life is to avoid pharmaceuticals, to avoid chemicals, to avoid any sort of non-natural um, substances in my body. So the reality or the possibility of relying on um, eye drops, non-natural eye drops for a long term is something that uh, I don't care for. Now, fortunately, I have other things that I at my disposal. Unbeknownst to my doctors, I have a Rife machine. I have knowledge of herbal treatments, eye bright, and uh, castor oil, and other natural substances that can help return the eye to its normal functioning. So I'm hopeful that in addition to the drops, I'm also uh, engaging in my own self-healing, and hopefully that can speed things along and return things back to normal. So that was number two that I wasn't aware of and prepared for prior to making my decision. Number three, and, let me just say some of these things I actually was prepared for, meaning I was told about it beforehand. So, for example, the doctors here on Saipan had prepared me for the fact that once you have an operation like a vitrectomy, the the reason I decided to get it was because of the risk. If I allowed the detached retina to remain unfixed for longer periods of time, it is possible that the detachment could increase and it could pass a point, specifically the macula, the center of the eye, could pass a point where once that area gets detached, even if it's reattached subsequent to that detachment, the vision would most likely be lost at that point. So I was prepared for an overall deterioration of vision. The doctors said that even after the operation, even after the successful vitrectomy, you may never have returned to the full pre-operation vision. So I was prepared for that. So before the operation, my right eye was nearsighted and my left eye was farsighted. So they compensated for each other. So I never had the need for glasses. So when I was doing work close up on a screen or in a book, my right eye would dominate. And when I was driving, my left eye would dominate. So it tended to balance itself out. So I was not uh, um, suffering in any way or inadequate in any way in terms of my vision. Now, post operation, the left eye is not as farsighted as it used to be, so that has affected the overall quality of the vision. But again, I'm hopeful. We're still in the phase, even though it's been 6 months out from the vitrectomy itself, it's only 1 month out from the um, insertion of the valve. So there's still healing going on. There's still some inflammation. There's still some pressure adjustments that need to be made. So we're not past the point of healing, and I do feel it getting better, on a day-by-day basis. But the deterioration in the overall vision, I was prepared for. But again, that's something you don't really know how that's going to affect you. You may be told intellectually that this is going to occur, but when it's actually happening, when you're actually experiencing it, it's a different story altogether. So that's number three. Number four, something that I was not prepared for beforehand, but that I learned during the recuperation period, was how to hydrate the eye. Again, because of the steroids for inflammation or the chemicals for balancing the pressure, the eye is more prone to dry eye, meaning there's not enough lubrication, not enough natural moisture in the eye. So one of the things that it's important to do is to lubricate the eye. So sometimes a doctor will give you drops, artificial tears or some other drops to help lubricate the eye. Um, Drinking water may not be enough. Now, one of the reasons drinking water may not be enough is because many of us are deficient in magnesium. So one of the things I learned as I was doing exhaustive research during the 4 months that I spent in Manila was how helpful it would be for hydration purposes to include a little bit of Celtic sea salt before in meals and when drinking water. So if you look up Barbara O'Neill, she's a health expert, health practitioner who recommends getting Celtic sea salt and including that in your diet so that you can have more magnesium in your cells that helps with the hydration of your cells and body. So that's something I didn't know before, but fortunately I had a lot of time recuperating, so I was able to look up a lot of information, do a lot of research on YouTube, and I found it out sometime into the recuperation that I was able to increase the hydration of my system and of my body, of my eyes, by using Celtic sea salt. I did discover, however, that some of the rumors are true that sometimes the Celtic sea salt may expose you to more lead and mercury that's collected in the salt. I have a quantum magnetic resonance analyzer, and I'll get into that in another video. But I'm actually able to determine the level of heavy metals in my system. And once I did start using the Celtic sea salt, I did notice a rise in the levels of lead and mercury. But I also use zeolite to help excrete those from the body. So I've been able to bring those back down, but just something to be aware about. And finally, the fifth thing that I was unaware of, and there may be more, so I may do a follow-up video as well, but the fifth thing that I was not aware of that I learned are some tips on eye health. Again, I mentioned Barbara O'Neill earlier. There are some tips on eye health that might be helpful. Different herbs, different foods that you can eat, different strategies that you can use to help strengthen the eye, different supplements that you can purchase as well that can help with the recuperation, vitamin A, lutein, that can help with the strengthening of the eye as well during the course of the recuperation. So, as one of my first videos back working on the Ageless Adept and Ageless Adept Within channel, I hope that's been helpful, but these are some things that you might want to keep in mind, some things that might be helpful for you if you are presented with the decision as to whether to get a vitrectomy or not. Now, as I promised you, would knowing any of this have helped or changed my decision to get the vitrectomy? And the answer is, drum roll please, no, absolutely not. Even the complications and the reliance on eye drops. Again, keep in mind that when I first discovered that I had the detached retina, the options were basically very simple. I could do nothing, and it's possible that it would not deteriorate any further because it had been like that for a year or possibly more. So there was structures within the eye, nerves within the eye that seemed to be preventing the detachment from proceeding further. And as a result, my vision was essentially 20/20, and I could have simply decided to do nothing. However, the risk with that is at any point, maybe due to some head trauma, maybe due to an accident or just normal deterioration, I could have woken up one day and the detachment could have proceeded past the macula and threatened vision in my left eye. The other option was to get the vitrectomy push things back in place, have it heal so that there wouldn't be any further detachment. But the trade-off is that my eyesight may not be 100% back to what it was before. So with the risk of losing eyesight completely, I decided to go ahead with it. And as I said, I was prepared for the loss of quality of overall vision. But my decision would not have changed. I still would have done it even if I had known any of these five. So hope that's helpful. Just something I wanted to share with you. If you're faced with that decision about that might help you with based on my experience. And I will do several other videos in terms of the expenses that I incurred and possibly my experience at St. Luke's in Manila that might be helpful for you as well. So thanks for watching. See you in the next video.